Alright, good morning everybody. Welcome to Radio Hidabrut 97.5 FM. And welcome to the Brooklyn Jewish Experience radio program. So happy that you joined us today. Wonderful to be with you, and I have something very special to share with you. Last night, I saw miracles. I was deeply inspired, I was flabbergasted, and I was blown away. Now, what were the miracles that I saw? I was not in Eretz Yisrael. I was not in Israel. I was right here in Brooklyn, New York. Good old Brooklyn. But I saw miracles. I saw Jews from Bensonhurst. I saw Jews from Bay Ridge. I saw Jews from Millbasin. I saw Jews from Sheepshead Bay. I saw Jews from Gravesend. I saw Jews from Staten Island. I saw Jews from all over gathered together. They were not at a ball game. They were not at a bar or a club, and these were Jews who had previously very little initiation, very little exposure, very little connection with Judaism, with the Jewish community, with Jewish education. And yet there they were, sitting together at the Brooklyn Jewish Experience weekly program, exhilarated, inspired, reaching deeper and more lofty plateaus and heights and new realities in the Jewish education and the Jewish knowledge. Now you'll say, why is it a miracle? I'll tell you why it's a miracle. There was a study pioneered by two very preeminent sociologists, Cohn and Kelman, several years ago. When I saw the report, when I saw their research, when I saw their study, I was almost paralyzed in grief. It was heartbreaking. It was agonizing. It was enervating. The study showed that the overwhelming majority of Jews between the age of 18, and if I'm not mistaken, age of 18 and 36, have such little regard to Judaism that they would view the destruction of Israel, God forbid, Chalila v'chas, chas v'shalom a million times, they would view the destruction of Israel as something that's not a personal tragedy. Okay. The overwhelming majority of Jews today, of young Jews, do not only have apathy, but they have indifference, and they are assimilating faster than you could say the word yes. Last night's gathering, and every week our gathering, defies It's so special and so beautiful. Last night, we had a privilege to be able to hear from a very special host and hostess, Dr. Yaakov and Chaim Moskowitz, who live on Bedford Avenue. I had spoken in Rabbi Rappaport's shul on Bedford Avenue. The shul is named for my Rebbe, Rabbi Pam, so it was a very big honor for me to speak in that shul. And shortly afterwards, Dr. Moskowitz approached me and said he would be interested in hosting an evening. And we had a beautiful smorgasbord replete with delicious foods and a buffet and a dessert table. Dr. Moskowitz is a very interesting personality. He's somebody who was born and bred in post-war, post-Nazi Germany, and who wanted to further his Yiddishkeit. Even though he came from a frum background, he wanted to further his Yiddishkeit. And he gave up a lot because he had to restart his career in America, do his residency afresh, his fellowship afresh. It wasn't easy. But here's a fellow who's a chief of a cardiology unit in a hospital, who's an assistant professor at Mount Sinai Medical School of Cardiology, an attending physician at Maimonides. And what did he do? He opened up his heart, he opened up his soul, he opened up his pocketbook, and he spent time with our students. For students to meet a real-life role model, somebody that had a spiritual struggle as well, who sacrificed comfort, affluence, a career to come to America and to start afresh. It's a gamble. Thank God he's very successful here. All in the name of furthering his spirituality, his frumkeit, his religiosity. It's beautiful. It's breathtaking. Mrs. Moskowitz is a woman who worked herself up the corporate ladder to the upper echelon, a senior position as a senior vice president at Morgan Stanley. And when it came to build a family, she gave it up. Students can listen to me, their rabbi, talk from today to tomorrow. And they are inspired. And Baruch Hashem, they're growing by leaps and bounds, and they're making changes. But to meet real-life heroes, a power couple that they can relate to, that could empathize with their struggles, with their pursuits, that could commiserate with their ups and downs. Dr. Moskowitz then gave a class. We called it a class on Kabbalah because Dr. Moskowitz learned Zohar on a very steady, regular basis. But really it was a class on the Aleph base, the building blocks of creation. It was a beautiful class. And the students were awestruck how somebody who's a professional, a man without a beard, a man who they could see in the hospital saving lives or teaching in Mount Sinai, giving over precious pearls, palatable words of wisdom, of spirituality. And the students lingered afterwards. But I must tell you, it was not only secular students that came last night. We also had students, as we always do, from religious homes who tragically, unfortunately, grew disenchanted with their heritage, with Yiddishkeit, with Judaism, for whatever the reason, and basically abandoned and deserted their faith. There's nothing more precious or beautiful to me when I see these students glowing, shining, radiating, basking in the presence of a Torah lesson, growing, and putting aside their prejudices, the stigmas, their burnout, and growing instead in appreciation for the Yiddishkeit that they never really discovered, that they never really knew. The Torah tells us what I think may be the most important pasuk in the Torah, the most important verse in the Bible. Banim atem lashem Elokeichem. You Jews are children of the Almighty. You know what that means to be a child? Ask any parent. Rahman al-Islam, lo aleinu. We should all be spared of this. The greatest pain, the greatest suffering, the greatest agina, the greatest agony, the greatest torture for a parent to experience is when their child abandons, leaves the fold, and feels disenchanted, disassociated, disconnected, disenfranchised from their heritage, from their family. It's terrible. And the parent cries bitter tears. How much more so? The parent of all parents, our antecedent, the ultimate patriarch, the ultimate father in heaven, Hashem, God. How much does he cry? How many tears does he shed? Over his children that are lost, that have absolutely no feeling for him. It's awful. And yet, the state of affairs today is that it's most of his children are lost. Whether they're from secular families, unaffiliated backgrounds, whatever the demography, or from religious homes that went off. And the greatest joy you could bring a parent, the greatest happiness, is when you reunite the child with the parent. When you bring the child home. And the greatest joy that we could bring Almighty God, Hashem Yisbarach, is when we bring his children home. On Radio Hidabrut 97.5 FM, I know that this program reaches tens of thousands, if not 100,000 listeners. And I truly believe, and I sincerely believe, that if every one of you listeners would open up your hearts and souls to our brothers and sisters, Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem, we are children of God. That means that each of his children are siblings one with the other. That means that a disconnected, disassociated, disenfranchised Jew is not merely a separate entity, but is our flesh and blood, is our brother and sister. And is our achrayus, it is our responsibility to be arevim, to be guarantors. Hashomer achi anochi, am I my brother's keeper? Yes, you are your brother and sister's keeper. And you will have to account after 120 years why you did not make any effort, why do not expend any finances, why you did not open your home to your brothers and sisters. If every one of you listeners makes one little contribution, whether it's $18, $36, $72, $100, $200, whatever the amount is, but if every one of you did that, we would have a budget for an entire year to save, to reunite Hashem's children with our Father in heaven. And we could expand our programs. I want you to imagine this for a second. Just think about this for a moment. In a few months from now, there will be extensive marketing inviting young Jewish adults, ages 18 to 40, to a Friday night dinner, all free, with all the nice Jewish amenities, wonderful food, good drinks, camaraderie. And there's a secular Jew out there who's been never affected by anything Jewish. And he or she sees the advertisement. Or there's a Jew out there who grew up religious, but abandoned the fold, but is bored on a Friday night, generally, and says, hey, that looks interesting, a Friday night dinner. Sounds like something interesting, sounds like something cool. I'll go, it's free. Then they go to the address, and it's a beautiful building, nice facilities, and everything looks Jewish, and they talk Jewish. Nothing to be suspicious about. It's wonderful. Great service to the community. Until they sit there on Friday night dinner, and the educator or the rabbi starts talking about the Torah portion, giving some inspiration, and then he injects and interjects into the conversation. And you should all know how much Yeshu, how much Jesus loves you. And they start, what? And you say, well, if a Jew heard that, they'd run it. No, they wouldn't run out necessarily. Because most Jews don't know what's wrong with Jesus. And most Jews, if they got a free meal, and they got a lot of love and tolerance and warmth and acceptance, and there was good camaraderie, there was good sociability, they'd stay. And you know what? They may be hooked. And that's what's going to happen with the Fuchsberg Center that's opening up right in our community to attract unaffiliated Jews or Jews that were raised in a religious background that gave it up. That's precisely what's going to happen. A $2.1 million building, $900,000 in renovations, plenty of budgeting for great programs. And what are we doing about it? Do we have financing to make Friday night dinners every week? No. Do we have financing to expand our programming? No. But you could help. You could help bring our brothers and sisters back and give the greatest joy in the world to Hashem. So I'm going to give you a phone number before we start the class portion of today's program. Give you a phone number for you to be able to commit a pledge. You could text, you could call, or you could visit the website. And the website has a lot of great resources about the Brooklyn Jewish Experience. The phone number is 646-785-6845. Again, it's 646-785-6845. And the website is www.thinkandcare.org. www.thinkandcare.org. So I'd like to share with you something that I shared with the Brooklyn Jewish Experience students last night, and then we'll expand upon it and expound upon it. This week's Torah reading, Parshas Bahaloscha, and as I tell the students, and for those listeners that are not familiar, every single week, Jewish people gather in the synagogue to study words of Torah. Because we live in a world that's floundering. We live in a world that has so much depravity, and so much debauchery, and so much immorality, that we need that connection with the Torah. We need to glean insight and wisdom into daily living, inspiration, in order to stay afloat. So every single week we gather in the synagogue, we gather in the shul, and we read from the Torah. This week's Torah reading, Bahaloscha, teaches us about the menorah, amongst many other things. The menorah was a 7-branch candelabrum. And the rabbis teach us, the Meforshim teach us, the great Kabbalists and mystics and Rishonim teach us that the 7 branches of the menorah represent the 7 wisdoms of the world. There are different types of wisdom. There's the physical sciences, the biological sciences. Even musicology is considered to be one of the great wisdoms of the world. And it's up to the human being to be able to dwell and delve into the different sciences, to understand the makings of the universe, to understand the profundity of creation, and how great and grand and majestic God is. But the word for candelabrum, the word for menorah, is spelled Mem Nun Vav Resh He. Mem Nun Vav Resh He. That's 5 letters. Every Hebrew letter, as we've said many times, has a numerical equivalent. Intrinsically, inherently, that letter is also a number. So the Mem is equal to 40, the Nun is equal to 50, the Vav is equal to 6, the Resh is equal to 200, and the He is equal to 5. If you add it all up, the gematria, the numerical equivalent, the corollary in numerics, it is equal to 301, which is the precise gematria of the word for Aish, fire, Aleph Shin. Aleph is equal to 1, and Shin is equal to 300. That's 301 altogether. What is Aleph Shin, Aish? We know that when God created the universe, Bereshis bara Elokim Eis HaShamayim ve'Eis HaAretz, Genesis, the beginning of the universe was comprised of Aish and Mayim, fire and water. Shamayim is a composite. The word for heavens, the word for celestial bodies, is comprised of Aish and Mayim. It's an amalgam. Sham Mayim is Aish and Mayim. Aish and Mayim is Shamayim, heavens. That means that the antecedent, the precedent, to all of creation was that God created Aish, which is a primordial, ethereal type of energy or fire, a power. This energy was concentrated, ultimately, in a special light called the Or HaGanuz, the secret hidden light that was ultimately hidden away for the righteous of future generations. However, it was also fused together and placed in the menorah. And that's why menorah is equal to Aish, to this primordial fire. Because this Aish represents the wisdom of creation, of how God created the universe, and it is the basis of all wisdom in the universe. So the menorah itself represents the greatest spiritual power, the wisdom of the Torah, the blueprint of creation, the Aish, the primordial fire. And all seven wisdoms hinge and are dependent upon the wisdom of the Torah, because the Torah encompasses and incorporates all the great wisdoms. Now you'll tell me, I've learned the Torah, I've learned the Talmud, and I have not seen yet all the wisdoms of the world. And the answer is that perhaps you've read it or learned it on a more superficial level. But if you probe and pry, it's a difference between using a regular microscope or an electron microscope. Electron microscope allows you to see things at a much deeper level. And if you probe and pry, you will see the deepest secrets of wisdom and the protoplasm of creation, of this blueprint, of this ancient wisdom, of this primordial energy. The DNA were letters. And anybody who's familiar with DNA knows that DNA itself is comprised of several letters. The Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Beis, is what the creation of the universe is made of. And it's what all the ancient secrets and the deepest secrets of the world are based on. I just want to share something with you that I thought of. A very interesting insight is that we know that the world is sustained on a physical level, on a physical plane, through water. Without water, the world would not exist. Water on the periodic table, anybody remembers those dreadful days of studying chemistry? Don't remind me, Rabbi, I don't want to think about chemistry. Well, and for anybody who's in high school listening now, the regents are coming up. And many of you may be taking regents for chemistry, so this will help you. The periodic table, you have an H, of course, and you have, which represents hydrogen, of course, you have oxygen, and water, which sustains our universe. Minus water, the universe would really not exist. People would not be able to thrive or live or survive. Water is comprised of H2O, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. We're going to try to stay pretty rudimentary and simple so not to confuse anybody. But the element hydrogen on the periodic table is equal to 1, and oxygen is equal to 16. So if you take 2 hydrogens, that means you have the value of 2, plus 1 oxygen, which is the value of 16. You add it together, and the total value of water, H2O, is 18. In Hebrew, the word for life, as we're all probably familiar, is chai. Chai means life, comprised of 2 letters, a ches and a yud. A ches is equal to 8, and a yud is equal to 10. Together, 18, life. Just like H2O. Give you another illustration. The human body, the most integral, the most critical and vital, perhaps, organ in the human body is the heart. The human being cannot survive without a heart. Neither could an animal. So basically in any organism, such as an animal or a human being, the heart is indispensable. It's critical, it's vital. What makes a heart live, beat, survive? You need oxygen in order for the heart to pump blood. On the periodic table, oxygen is equal to, oxygen is comprised of two O's, O2. O is equal, like we said before, to 16, and 2 16ths, or 16 times 2, is 32. So oxygen is equal to 32 on the periodic table. The Hebrew word for lev, heart, is equal to 32. A lamed is 30, and a bet is 2, it's 32. I'll give you one more. Carbon dioxide is very important. We exhale carbon dioxide, but first we have to basically materialize it, sort of, in our bodies. In order for our bodies, in order for our hearts, in order for our bloodstream to function. And therefore, there's a very strong correlation between carbon dioxide and blood. Carbon dioxide is CO2. Carbon is equal to 12, and oxygen, we said, is equal to 16. So since there are two O's, you have 32 plus the carbon, 12 is 44. The Hebrew word for blood is dam. Dam is daled mem. 4 and 40 is 44. How beautiful. How special. So, continuing on the theme of medicine, of science, I'd like to talk a little about a very important subject, and that's the important subject of taking care of one's health. You know that there was a fellow who went to the doctor, he went to his physician for a regular checkup, but he was a little suspicious, he was a little concerned, because he had a certain ailment, and his regular internist, his general medicine practitioner, referred him to somebody that was more of a specialist, and he was waiting very anxiously to get his blood report back. He waited every day. Finally, he got the call. And the secretary asked him, "Are you standing or sitting?" He says, "Why?" She says, "Well, I have good news and bad news. What do you want to hear first?" And he said, "Well, I'd like to hear the good news first." And she said, "Well, the good news is that the blood report shows that you have 3 days to live." He says, "If that's the good news, what's the bad news?" She says, "Well, the bad news is I was supposed to call you 3 days ago." Judaism teaches us that we are mandated to take care of our health. Now, to a lot of Jews, this may sound incredulous. This may sound surprising. This may sound shocking. But no. It is a virtual imperative. We are mandated to take care of our health. Now, just last week, we all know that Mayor Bloomberg went ahead and instituted, and whether it will pass legislation or not remains to be seen, remains to be determined, but it probably will, because everybody on the health administration, I think, was actually appointed by Mayor Bloomberg, and those are the people that have to actually go ahead and, I believe, pass the legislation, so to speak. But he's trying to institute, and he's trying to go ahead and implement different protocols and procedures so that New Yorkers are more healthy. And he said basically that we are destroying ourselves, we're not making the right decisions, and therefore the government has to step in. And I think that New York City has so many Jews that it is a vilification and desecration of God's name, the fact that we're not wielding our influence, and we need a mayor who's a secular Jew, who does not believe in the Torah, to try to educate the people about healthy habits. Because it's our heritage. It's our mandate to live healthy, to eat healthy, and teach the world about what it means to be healthy. According to the Mekubalim, according to the mystics, the very essence of the Torah, the very beginning and origin of the Torah, is all about teaching the human being that they have to be healthy. Torah says, Bereshis bara. And the great mystics and Hasidic giants teach us that the word bara shares the etymology with the word bari, which means healthy. So what's the Torah teaching us? Bereshit bari. The first thing that a human being has to be healthy, to take care of your life, to guard your health. Why? Why is that so important? And the answer is that it's impossible to serve God. It's impossible to serve your neighbor, your family member. It's impossible to be an observant Jew if you're not healthy, if you're not well. You can't perform the commandments. You can't perform the mitzvahs. You can't sanctify God's name. You can't disseminate or propagate His word. You can't be a light unto the nations. If you're ill, if you're infirmed, if you're debilitated, if you're paralyzed, if you're sick, it's so hard. So God says, Bereshit, the first thing I want you to know is I want you to be healthy, to conduct yourself with a healthy lifestyle, to make the right choices. My wonderful grandfather, Rabbi Nassim Leiter, Zatzal, may his memory be for a blessing. He has manuscripts and manuscripts. And he said something astounding in his manuscripts. He said that the Jewish people were given 613 solutions for healthy living, for optimal life. We call it commandments. The Zohar calls it solutions, advice, prescriptions for healthy living, for a better lifestyle. The rabbis went ahead, and the rabbis added 7 more commandments, for a total of 620 commandments. 620 is the same numerical equivalent as the word for crown, keser. Chaf, taf, resh. Chaf is 20, taf is 400, resh is 200, altogether 620. Because when the Jew performs the commandments, or the solutions for healthier living, when he follows the prescription of the ultimate doctor, the ultimate physician, God, who knows us better than we could ever know ourselves. And think about it, just as an analogy. If Bill Gates knows Microsoft better than anybody else because he's the engineer and he's the creator of the system, then how much more so does God know us better than any physician, better than any psychologist, better than any scientist? Because God is our creator. And God said, you need certain types of prescriptions, certain type of solutions to make sure that you have a wonderful, healthy, happy life. So if you do all 620, and it's impossible for every Jew to do 620, but we strive to do as many as possible, you have a crown, keser. But more than that, the Hebrew word for in health or with health is bibriut, which is equal to 620. Because we need health in order to be able to fulfill the commandments, in order to be able to live as good Jewish people. Do you know that when it comes to, let's say, pig, and I have to tell you that last night at the Brooklyn Jewish Experience program, this is a tangent, but you'll forgive me because it's so interesting. A woman came over to me, a young lady, and she said to me, I want you to know, my parents are so secular that when I came home from a trip to Israel, the first meal that they greeted me with, in order that I be well nourished after my whole arduous trip, she said she had the time of her life in Israel, in Eretz Yisrael. But the meal that they prepared for her was pork chops. And she said, why? What are you doing? I'm coming from a spiritual high. But she said, but it's not their fault. They're so secular. These are our local brothers and sisters. Halachically, according to Jewish law, if a little piece of pig, of pork, falls into your mixture of food, the law is the law of proportions over ratios, of bitul. If there is 60 permitted items versus the one forbidden item, then it's nullified. The law of nullification, the law of bitul. Let me ask you a question. Let's say you have something that is dangerous. it's not only not salubrious for your health, but it's injurious, detrimental for your well-being. Maybe it's something poisonous, but it's something that could harm you. Let's say that item falls in to your mixture of food. Halacha teaches us. The Talmud says, and it's codified in the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law, that a health danger is more stringent and severe than something like pork, something not kosher. Chamura sakanta me'isura is the phraseology, the terminology for this law. And that means that more stringent and severe is something that is sakana, that is injurious or dangerous for your health, for your life, than something forbidden by the Torah, like pork. That's how important it is to guard our health. So you tell me 1 second. I'm a spiritual guy or a spiritual woman. You know, why do I need to take care of my health? After all, I'm a soul. My body, it's going to decay and rot one day. My body is just a veneer. It's a facade. It's not who I really am. My soul is forever. I love how people get religious. You know, people use religiosity, people use frumkeit as an excuse because they say, after all, I don't live forever. That's okay for me to indulge. It's okay for me to go ahead and make decisions that are not healthy. This is antithetical to true Jewish belief. And I'll explain why. If you were an alien, picture yourself as an alien in Mars. Now, whether Mars has life or does not have life, for argument's sake, hypothetically, let's assume for the moment that there is life on Mars, and there's an alien observing an astronaut doing research in space. Now, if you're that alien, put yourself in the alien's shoes for a moment. You're the alien, you're watching the astronaut. What do you see? You see a spacesuit. Spacesuit. When you look at the object in space, which is really a human being coming up to space to do research, do you envision, do you project, do you anticipate in your wildest dreams that the true object is not that elaborate, complex, fancy spacesuit, but there's something inside? And without that something inside, the human being, there's no point in the spacesuit. The reason why an astronaut puts on a spacesuit to go to extraterrestrial life is because without the spacesuit, you can never traverse outer space. It's a different environment. And the person would basically implode. The human being can never withstand the pressures from this foreign environment. So the human being has to outfit him or herself in a spacesuit, and the spacesuit renders the human being basically impervious to any harm from outer space. But the true essence of that astronaut is not the spacesuit. The spacesuit is only the protection, is only the garb. But yet, if there was a hole in that spacesuit, if that spacesuit got injured or harmed, or something terrible happens to that spacesuit, then the precious human being inside is finished. Of course we are souls. And there's so many proofs. If anybody would like proofs of that, I highly recommend getting the book Search Judaism. It's available in Judaica stores around the world or online at searchjudaism.com. And I offer many proofs for the fact that we have a soul. We come from a higher arena, from a different world, our souls. From a spiritual world, something that supersedes any type of galaxy, which is still part of the physical existence. But our souls cannot navigate this world, which is fraught with so much physicality, challenge, hardship. Our souls can't do it because it's entering foreign environment. In order for our souls to function here, our souls need to be outfitted, to be garbed in a spacesuit, which is our physical bodies. But the physical body is so vital, is so essential, is so indispensable, because if something happens to the physical body, the soul can never function. The soul cannot serve. And just like an astronaut goes to space on a mission, on a very important mission, a colossal mission, so much money is invested for that astronaut to get to space. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. If that astronaut goes to space and does not come back with anything documented, with any hardcore research, then the trip was in vain. The trip was in futility. The trip was a waste. And NASA will be infuriated and irate. We souls come to this world on a mission to complete this world, to rectify the world, to repair the world, to elevate, to uplift. And that's why we are given our bodies, in order to be able to navigate in this world, in order to be able to traverse this foreign environment for our souls, to make an impact, to make an indent. If we come back after our lives are over, when we go back, when our souls return, just like the human body returns to earth and divests. When the astronaut returns to earth, he or she divests him or herself from the spacesuit. We are divested. We are disrobed from our physical bodies. And God says to our souls, what did you accomplish? The same way NASA says to the astronaut, to the human being inside the spacesuit. Let's see what you pulled off. What did you do? But we have to make sure to protect, to preserve, to take care of our bodies. And that's why the Torah is so careful. I don't have to, you don't have to believe me. Open up a Bible. Open up a Torah. Chamushikam Torah, the 5 books of Moses. Refer to Sefer Devarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 9. Refer to Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 15. Look at the third commandment in Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 9, verse 5. The Torah is replete with references mandating us to guard our health, because otherwise there's really no point of us being here. Maimonides, Rambam, was not only the greatest Jewish scholar. We say from Moses to Moses, there was no one like Moses. From Moshe to Moshe, from Moshe Rabbeinu. From Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, who gave us the law at Sinai, to Moses, Maimonides. The great Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. There was no greater one than Moses. He was also a physician. He served the royal court of Saladin. And he wrote a book, The Guide to Health. And I want to share with you what he says here. He says, if only a person would care for himself the way he cares for an animal. Now, in the Rambam's times, it was a different type of society, maybe a little more agrarian society, and they certainly didn't have cars or trucks yet. And therefore, they had animals. Animals were their mode of transportation, aside from all the other functions that the animal had. And says Maimonides, if only a person would take care of himself like he takes care of the animal he rides on. Now this brings me back to memories of, when I was a child going on Sundays, passing by communities and neighborhoods like Bay Ridge, or different types of communities in Brooklyn. Especially, I used to love watching the Italians take care of their cars. And it was beautiful, the way that they invested the time and the patience to scrub their cars and make it shine and sparkle. But unfortunately, there's so many of us, We take care of our homes. We decorate. We make our homes ornate and beautiful. We take care of our cars. We make sure to only get good leases or purchase wonderful cars. And God forbid if that car had a dent in it. Ay, 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 ay. We'd make sure to go to the body shop and to have it fixed immediately. But what about our bodies? Says Maimonides, everybody's taking care of their possessions, the animal they ride on. Rambam says that if you take care of your animal, if you take care of yourself like you take care of your animal, you'd be spared from so many illnesses. Says Maimonides, you will not find anybody who gives the animal more food than necessary. You ever see somebody who puts more gasoline into their car than the car needs? I mean, it's ridiculous. You try to pump and pump and pump. You want to break the thing? You want to kill your animal? You'll never want to kill your animal. Your animal, you're dependent upon your animal. You're dependent upon your car. He measures out his animal's feed according to what the animal can take. But the human being, says Maimonides, eats without measure, in excess, without a thought. We indulge, we gorge ourselves. It is so inappropriate. And according to Rambam, it's against the Torah. Similarly, says Rambam, the human being goes ahead and calculates how much exercise his animal needs. How much activity his animal needs in order not to get sick. But the person himself does not apply this to his own body and gives little thought to exercise, even though it is key to maintaining health and avoiding most illness. And there's no other substitute, says Rambam, for physical activity and exercise. It is so important for the human being to take care of his or her health. And it is a Kiddush Hashem. When people see other people gorging or indulging, it doesn't look nice. As a matter of fact, the Gemara teaches us, Talmud says, that a person who eats in public, whether it's an ice cream cone or a pizza slice, whatever it is, that person is invalid. Maybe I shouldn't say this, because this may go ahead and disqualify and invalidate most of the people we know from being kosher witnesses. Why? Because that's what an animal does. An animal eats in public, in the street, without regard. A human being is supposed to have etiquette. A human being is supposed to have decorum. A human being, food is there because you eat in order to live. You don't live in order to eat. We eat in order to empower ourselves, to energize ourselves, so that we could be better people, so we could serve God better. Bereshit Bari, the beginning of everything, is taking care of one's health. King Solomon, Shlomo Melech, says in Proverbs and Mishlei, chapter 13, verse 25, that the righteous man, the good man, eats in order to satisfy his soul. And Maimonides says elsewhere, in his magnum opus, in Yad Chazakah, the laws of Deos, the laws of knowledge, says Maimonides, that eating excessively is like poison to the body and is the root cause of many illnesses. I'd like to make a recommendation. The Talmud in Bava Metzia, page 107, page Kuf Zayin, says that eating grains in the morning, pas boker, the Talmud calls it, whole wheat, not enriched flour, whole wheat flour, whole grains. Eating whole grains in the morning, says the Talmud, that the most important meal that you could eat throughout the day is breakfast. Talmud elsewhere seems to say that a person that eats breakfast in the morning is assured that the brain chemistry will work better and they'll be able to function academically on a more superior level. But the Talmud says that if you eat grains in the morning, you're sparing yourself from 83 different illnesses. Now, what's very interesting is that the Hebrew word for illness or for disease or for suffering is the word machala. Machla, Mem, Ches, Lamed, Hey. It's comprised of 4 letters. Mem is equal to 40, Ches is equal to 8, and Lamed is equal to 30, and 5 is Hey. Altogether 83. Says the Talmud that if you want to be spared from Machla, from the 83 illnesses, you have to eat healthy. You have to eat nutritiously. You have to eat well. And there's no greater thing than eating a well-balanced, nutritious breakfast in the morning. And again, the Talmud says that if you eat this breakfast in the morning, you are saved from countless illnesses.